This is piece 138. Object was its original name, and the second half of the title, Le Déjeuner en fourrure, uh, lunch in fur, was added on by a museum curator who was setting up the show that this piece appeared in I think it was in London. So this is Murray Oppenheim's piece. She is one of our few female artists from Austria, but this was created in France where she lived, and she ultimately moved to the United States. But this is in the form of an average teacup, saucer, and teaspoon that was purchased at a department store. It is covered in Chinese gazelle fur. That's its form. The context for this piece and the kind of this, wherever you read it, the story is something like this, that Murray Oppenheim and Pablo Picasso here's Pablo Picasso and here's Murray Oppenheim, were at a cafe drinking tea, and Murray Oppenheim was wearing this fur-covered metal, brass, maybe bracelet, and Pablo Picasso made the comment about, wow, you can cover anything in fur. And Murray Oppenheim said, yeah, you could cover this teacup set in fur. And then she, because her tea was getting cold, asked the waiter for more fur. So from that conversation grew her action to go get a teacup, saucer, and teaspoon and cover it in fur. And it was instant success. So it functions as an object of surrealism, where you take something that is just normal, it's an ordinary object, and then you turn it into something personal, something that grabs you, something poetic. In this case, it's a found object, which is pretty standard. It can be a painting, though. And it's just placed in some bizarre combination. And it challenges your thinking about that original standard everyday object. One of the painters that you might have heard of, who is a surrealist painter, is Salvador Dali. And this is his famous piece, The Persistence of Memory. And Salvador Dali, with his surrealistic art images, was trying to get at the subconscious. He was very into Sigmund Freud's thinking, psychoanalysis. He was very into putting down in his painting his dreams. And so we see just this surrealistic juxtaposition of something that we see in everyday life, which are clocks placed on something weird, like a tree branch, a block, and in a different format. So this is surrealism. The content of this piece by Murray Oppenheim, the object, the lunch on the grass of Edward Manet. I've referred to this before. It's not one of our pieces, but I've referred to it before when we were looking at Manet's Olympia. Do you remember that piece? So here, luncheon on the grass, right? Very evocative, provocative. And so this is luncheon in fur here. This title starts eliciting this notion of being sexual or sexualized. So fur is an erotic, animalistic, substance. And when we cover a teacup, the idea is that a teacup is a pretty feminine object. And so there's this sexual overtone of a woman, sexualized here. So that happened with the naming of this piece of art, which is interesting. How do we name pieces of art? Other content here of a surrealistic nature is that, tea is a relaxing experience, but then if you put fur on it, then all of a sudden it changes this relaxing event into something more aggressive. Another interpretation of this content could be, mostly bourgeoisie people, people who can afford it, sit in a cafe wasting time, drinking tea. I don't think it's a waste. I mean, I'm like a big tea drinker. Uh, so, um, but if you compare that to this notion of the fur, this gazelle fur, beautiful animal that, is likely, hunted, perhaps mistreated, then we have this juxtaposition of feeling. So Murray Oppenheim was instantly, in the news with her uh, lunch in fur object. And for a decade, they say she became pretty withdrawn uh, from that limelight. But she has a pretty extensive set of surrealistic pieces that she created afterwards. And so this is a table, bronze and wood. And then this appears on a book. It refers back to the teacup. Obviously, it was made for the cover of a book about her. She made the pieces. This is bee covered bicycle seat that I don't know if it's a found. I think it might be a found photograph that she recognized as surrealistic. And then here she created this. It's titled The Couple. These shoes. So that is surrealism and Murray Oppenheim, one of our female artists.